Good afternoon, and welcome from your soon-to-be very favourite Atomic Blonde here in the UK. I have a beverage in hand, which only means one thing, the weekly roundup of nerdy news. So this week, quite a few of the shows I've been watching are coming or building up to their season finales. And we also had a couple of new shows this week, which I'm looking forward to talking about. So at the top of the list is The Orville. So as you know, for any of those of you who would have seen me on PJ's stream, Orville Nation, so shout out to PJ. Thank you for having me on again and helping give me the confidence to actually start doing my own videos. So what an amazing episode again this week. Really didn't see the ending coming. And what I love so much about this show is that, you know, we've had more story arc and character building in the 9 episodes we've had than in some of the shows that we see over like 4 or 5 years. You know, the characters just don't evolve, or if anything, they seem to devolve. So to see the journey between Charlie and Isaac, just, you know, coming from so hostile all the way through to her ending. So spoilers, guys. Charlie dies, which I just did not see coming. You know, she was new to the cast. Her story arc was really interesting and really looked like she was going to be a permanent fixture in the show. And sort of seeing her, especially, you know, when she had the conversations with the Kalon, who had the human emotions, and sort of understanding their plight and where they came from being slaves, as to, you know, what ultimately drove them to commit genocide, which I think we can all agree is not a good thing. But I think anything like this, these kind of topics, and a lot of topics that the Orville choose to cover, are massively nuanced. You know, nobody says in their right mind that slavery is correct. But, you know, the nuances of coming from that slave race and revolting, and then going to the extremes they did, probably because they were machines and, you know, didn't have empathy, you know. But it's all about, you know, allegory and human nature, that a lot of the, as Obi-Wan says, a lot of the truths we cling to depend on our own point of view. So, you know, in terms of how we view people, races, genders, etc., you know, very much depends on our own points of view and our own experiences. And as we know, it's very easy to judge races or people, you know, from different cultures to our own, based on experience of one individual, or, you know, meeting one individual having one bad experience. Now, obviously, her experience was very extreme, with the Kalon coming in and attacking us, and ultimately killing what appears to be the love of her life, Amanda. So, you know, you completely empathize and understand how she feels, but then you also empathize with Isaac, because ultimately he done the right thing. He saved us. He basically turned his back on his own people to save us. And, you know, you can't hold one Kalon responsible for a whole nation, world's actions. You know, and that's something that we see every day here on in our world. You know, people's views are tainted because of minority opinions, actions, and as you know, one of the big problems we have in fandom, and the arguments that we're often having, is that, you know, people are all tarred with the same brush. You know, you might have a view, but that doesn't necessarily put you in the box of all these other people and their views. But I don't want to go too much down that can of worms today. Just really wanting to catch up on my nerdy news, maybe have a cultural conversation on this in a different stream. So anyway, we had this whole setup that really over the last few episodes, Charlie and Isaac have started building bridges, and I think an element of sort of respect there, that, you know, she hadn't gone the whole way for forgiveness at that point, but certainly started to understand that Isaac didn't represent all Kalon. So we really sort of started to see them having a breakthrough. You know, kind of saying, oh God, in future seasons, you know, these two are going to end up like really close. And that's why it was such a shocking turn of events when, you know, to save the Kalon and prevent, you know, kind of all out war with the Krill and you know, everything that was going on, that she actually sacrificed herself to prevent the weapon going off, and creating peace. That sacrifice to create peace, which is just a turn of events I don't think anybody saw coming. But again, as you'd expect from Seth MacFarlane, just great writing, constantly wrong-footing you, but still an enjoyable episode. Still, I mean, I have to say, I'm getting to the point I actually hate Seth MacFarlane because I think he makes me cry every week. And it's, I'm having a hard time, I'm trying to keep this reputation up here, and I get to end up like going, yeah, I'm not crying, you're crying every week. And texting my cousin and saying, yeah, you're going to cry. So stop making us cry, Seth, and make us laugh some more. But saying that, I would not change season 3 for the world. I have loved every episode. I don't think there's a really weak one in the bunch. There isn't anything that I probably wouldn't rewatch again through the whole season. Once we've had the season finale, I'll try and do a recap for the whole of season 3. And like everybody else, we're sitting here with bated breath going, why haven't you renewed the Orville? It is, I'd say, that and the other show that I'm going to move on to talk about next, For All Mankind, are just two of the best sci-fi in different ways, but written shows and acted shows. I mean, the visual effects have just been stunning. I mean, I know they've had a long time to pull this season together, obviously with the COVID, etc. So they've had a lot of time to tweak and refine, have time on the visual effects that not all shows do. But it does just show the dividends that it pays off, and how it doesn't sort of then, because the problem is with bad CGI, sometimes it can kind of throw you out the show or throw you out the storyline because you're just like, whoa, that's just so bad. Then it actually takes you out of what's happening. And it's going to be one of the best space fights on TV seen in a very, very long time in terms of the choreography, how it was executed. So, kudos to the VX team. I think they definitely deserve an Emmy, as do a lot of the actors in the show, and probably Seth Ree's writing as well. It's just head and shoulders above any other sci-fi that we're seeing. He's not afraid to tackle the difficult issues. It just shows that you can do some like real world issues, but do them with the nuance, with the layers that we all need, that reflects human nature, and people. It's okay to show people who are afraid or angry or even are bigoted, as long as there is some sort of character arc or sort of resolution. But also some resolution will be that some things just won't change, or it's a very, very long journey to get those things to change. And it's okay to show those sides. It's okay to show people disagreeing, which we kind of are losing, or it's just I'm right, you're wrong kind of dialogue, which is just poor. It's just you can't just have lead characters saying I'm right, no you're not, yes I am, no you're not, yes I am, bigot, shot, gone. It's just ridiculous. So it's great to see someone really trying to push sci-fi forward, and giving it the layers and the nuances that sci-fi deserves, and also doing it in such a way that even though it does reflect some of the issues that we're seeing today and have done for many years, it's not in a way that it's going to date it. So when you watch it in 10, 15 years time, you can't relate to it, or you're just laughing at it going, blimey, yeah, they thought that was an issue. Hence why a lot of people do go back to and talk about the original series of Star Trek and TNG, etc., because some of those issues, we have moved on from, thankfully. But they just portray it as just is, yeah, there's a woman on the bridge. Yeah, there's a Russian on the bridge. Why wouldn't there be? We don't need to point it out because that's just normal, because we've resolved all those issues. Yes, we have different species on the crew. Those species aren't necessarily heterosexual, because it's just normal. We're an interplanetary thing, and that's what the Orville does well, as the original Star Trek. So even though some of it, we look back and it's massively dated in terms of visual effects, they're still people's stories. They're still human stories, so we can still relate to them. And some of the politics, you can still understand it, or understand why they wrote that episode, because it's portrayed in a good way. It's almost a good way of almost benchmarking as well. How well are we moving on as people? Are we still replaying stories of exactly the same issues they were writing about in the 50s and 60s and 70s, or are some of these stories redundant, which is what you'd always hope. And some have moved on, but maybe not as far as we would like. But anyway, I'm digressing. So Orville this week, oh gosh, I mean, it has to be a 10 out of 10 this episode. Just all in the acting, the story, the story arc conclusion of Charlie and Isaac and the Kalon. As I said, the visual effects were just breathtaking. It's just absolutely stunning. So can't wait for the season finale. God knows where it's going to go next week. It's just been building and building. And if that's the story we get for the penultimate, it could literally go anywhere in the finale. And obviously you got to think that Mercer's daughter's got to start playing a part in this. We've seen her once. She got mentioned last week. Is he going to go try and rescue her from Krill? I mean, we don't know, but I think she's got to play a part in this. And maybe setting up, hopefully season 4. So if you've not watched the Orville, do go out and watch it. It's on Disney Plus in the UK. It's on Hulu in the US, and it's also going to be coming on to Disney Plus in the US in August, I think August 10th. And I think it's on Disney Plus in most other countries outside of the US. So the first 2 seasons are just as well written, probably a bit more lighthearted. There's a lot more humor in the first 2 seasons, but it really still builds the characters, and it still references back to those first 2 seasons, completing story arcs, developing the characters. So I think, if you're a bit more serious sci-fi, you'll still enjoy season 1 and 2, but you will love a season 3. If you love the comedy, you might be a little bit disappointed. It is that bit darker for season 3, but there's still humor in it, and it's just so well written. I think it will take you on the journey to still enjoy it. So do check out the Orville on Thursdays, Disney Plus. So moving on to my second show for this week is For All Mankind, which is on Apple Plus. There's some great stuff on Apple. It's a bit of a weird one because not many people have Apple. There isn't a massive amount of content. There's a lot of, you can access other channels through Apple and subscribe through Apple, same as you do like on Amazon Prime, that you can basically watch Shudder and Stars and all those kind of things. But some of the core content that they have, it's just brilliant TV. For All Mankind, Severance was brilliant. Again, if you like your sci-fi, it's kind of drama, thriller, sci-fi. Stars Patricia Arquette. It's just it was directed by I think produced by Ben Stiller. And don't let that put you off, because it's just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant writing. You constantly they unravel the story really well paced. And just at the season finale, I was literally at the TV just screaming like, no, I gotta see season 2 now. So do check out Severance. And also one of my other favorites, Ted Lasso. So being a Brit, football or soccer, as you might call it, is obviously a big part of our culture. And this the whole premise of an American football coach coming over to manage a Premiership football team is just hilarious in itself to any Brit. But the way it's written, it's really surprised me. I didn't think I was going to like it. I'm no offense, but I'm not a big fan of American comedies, because British humor is quite sarcastic and dark and ironic sometimes. And so yeah, but I was hooked. First episode, I was hooked. So the 3rd season is coming in August. I will be doing reviews of Ted Lasso, because I just absolutely love the show. It's just so funny, and again, lots of human stories, lots of character development, but very funny. And as a Brit, you can see who some of the characters are based on. Roy Kent, just a legend. I would suggest Google him, but not around children. There's quite a lot of strong language. So anyway, now I've given my quick overview of some of the shows on Apple that I like, going back to For All Mankind. For people that don't know what that's about, it's basically by Ronald D. Moore, who brought back Battlestar Galactica so successfully. So, he's a very talented writer, does like his sci-fi. So you kind of shows in good hands. We're now on the third season, coming towards the season finale. It starts off sort of in the 50s, 60s, and it's like a parallel timeline. So what would have happened if America hadn't got to the moon first is basically the premise of the first season. So basically the Russians get to the moon first and the moon landings. And then as a result, it's then, so there's lots of parallels. So we know up to a point, but then obviously it spins off to go, well, what would have happened? And basically what it's hypothesizing is that the Americans would have continued to develop and plow much more money into the space program, to develop the space program, to obviously get their butts to the moon, and make sure that Russia doesn't get, anything that can be found up there, minerals or a base and those kind of things, and then building space stations. And now season 3, we're up to the 90s, and basically going to Mars, missions to Mars, and who's going to get there. And at the moment, we kind of got the Russians, the Americans, and like a private company. So the lead character of that is kind of meant to be like a bit of a sort of Steve Jobs kind of tech genius. Made his money, and he's all for like sort of private industry and getting to the moon, and it shouldn't all be governments. And obviously, as there's lots of twists and turns, and as you'd expect with space travel, nothing's ever straightforward, and there's lots of dramas and things that happen. And basically, they all have to pull together and collaborate as a team. So, as it's a parallel world, obviously the history isn't identical to ours. So there's still much more of a Cold War than in our timeline. I think they're up to 91. And they're having to work together so all the astronauts get home. But we haven't had glasnost and things like that, so there's a lot more political layers to it, and we're really building, which looks like, to a huge political hot potato, I don't know what, at the end of this season, and how we're going to get all the astronauts and cosmonauts off Mars. There's been so many, they're kind of stranded there at the moment. There's been a landslide, a lot of the crews have been killed. There's only one ship left that can actually get them back home, as the Russian ship got destroyed, and then the American ship got damaged, saving the Russian cosmonauts. So everybody sort of having to work together. But there's a relationship that's happened between one of the American astronauts and the cosmonauts, which is definitely going to lead to some sort of political issues, shall we say. And the American astronaut involved is the adopted daughter of one of the lead astronauts from NASA, he was involved in the original space program, and he was like the team who was going to go to the moon in the first season. So I mean, it's massively well written. There's so much character development. We've been with these characters for 40 years now, over the 3 seasons, and then their children, and obviously the political world, how some of it's the same, how some of it's different, how, as happens in real life, you've got people on the ground or in space, as it was, that just as individuals, human beings, we get on fine. There's no reason for us to be arguing and fighting. We're just human beings at the end of the day. But the politics and, the people above them with the, red tape and mistrust and all of that, constantly playing a part and affecting people's lives and safeties and all of those kind of things. So it's really, really building to an interesting finale. And I think getting back from Mars is potentially, obviously, one of the big problems. But what happens when they get back from Mars, and the American astronaut, and what happens with her, and given that she is such a, the daughter of a space legend icon. So yeah, remains to be seen what happens there. Again, do check it out. I'm probably not doing it much justice trying to explain it, but every season just builds on the last one. There's so much character development, and the writing is just absolutely top notch. There's lots of pop culture type references, but there's also other references which are quite funny and interesting, and they do cut in original footage with modern footage, like they did in like Forrest Gump and things like that. So Do go check it out, and do try and check out Apple, even if you only do a free trial. There's some great shows on there. They don't publicize them particularly, and I don't know if they're just planning on just doing a slow growth, slow build, and then a bigger launch, because obviously they do have the resources at hand. Apple, they don't need to be pushing as hard as some of the other streaming services. Don't know, but it is a shame, because there's some absolutely great shows on there that just I don't think get enough recognition. And it's a shame that more people don't get to watch, like Ted Lasso, For All Mankind, and Severance. But do check it out if you can. So going from sort of shows building to season finales, there's 2 new shows this week. One I've watched all the way through because it's a binge model. The other one is 2 episodes over the next few weeks, so I can only talk on the first 2 episodes. So the first one is From. I think it's already been released in the States. So, you may know whether it ends up being any good or not. We had the first 2 episodes this week. And as I said, we've got 2 episodes next week, 2 episodes the week after. It's on Sky Sci-Fi. And the premise is basically there's a very small town in like rural America. I assume it's America. And pretty much from the get-go, there's some really weird shenanigans going on. And it's kind of like a horror Twilight Zone kind of premise, I guess. That in this town, there's all this activity and they're running around and they need to get in the houses before it gets dark because something bad's going to happen. And one character basically is just drunk, and they're trying to kick him out and say, look, you need to get home, you need to get to your family, you're running out of time, it's getting dark, you got to go. And basically he doesn't make it. I think he passes out or something. And as a result, his family his wife and daughter are brutally killed. And I'll say brutally, they do show you the remains of the body, and it's like, wow, there's not much left. But you're always like, what the hell is going on? So then it kind of, the pacing's very good actually. Within the first 2 episodes, you know the premise of what's going on. So anybody that goes into this town can't leave. So every time they kind of drive out, they kind of end up, it doesn't matter how far they drive in a straight line, they always end up coming back to the town. So you basically get that people have been there for varying degrees of time. Obviously all not from this town to start with. We don't know how they end up in this town, and we don't know why they can't get out. All we know right now that at night there's appears to be like sort of ghosts, or I think there might be ghouls of some description, but basically they found ways that basically if they stay indoors, they block out all the windows, and they kind of got like hex bags that actually prevents these creatures from getting into the buildings. But if they do get in, basically they just rip apart and kill / eat whoever's in that house. So far 2 episodes in, we've sort of basically got this premise of this town set up. We know they can't leave. We know there's these things after you at night. And there was 2 accidents and 2 sets of characters that have also been introduced to this town. So we're kind of in their situation that this is their first night. People are like literally holding guns at them, tying them up, saying this is like for your protection. You need to, you just need to chill out. We're trying to keep you safe. Now, obviously, if you're in that situation, would you feel safe? You'd be like trying to get away. So you've got very lots of human emotions, but we don't know, say, how or why they stumble across this town. We don't know why they can't leave, and we don't know what these creatures are other than they want to kill them. So all this is kind of unraveled over, say, 2 episodes. So far, yeah, I'm quite interested. It's, say it's been well paced. Kind of know enough of what's going on to want to continue with it. Because some of these shows can be really slow to unwind, but I think it is only 6 episodes. So they're kind of where I'd expect them to be 2 episodes in. Again, the acting's quite good. I don't know who wrote it, actually. I should probably look that up. But yeah, so far the premise is quite interesting. I'm going to be obviously watching the remainder of the season and let you know how it goes. These kind of premises, they can go off a cliff quite quickly, because I think people have an idea, but they're like the JJ school of writing, so they never know how to end it, and it can be massively disappointing. But fingers crossed. This will continue to be interesting and will actually explain itself over the course of the next 4 episodes. So that's on Sky Sci-Fi here in the UK. I don't know what channels it's been on in America, but again, if you kind of like the sort of Twilight Zone, Twin Peaks, things of that sort of ilk, check it out. And then lastly, a bit of an interesting one. So Paper Girls. I had the opportunity to preview Paper Girls, the first episode through Amazon. I'm on one of their lists that I get to watch shows and tell them what I think before it comes out. Now, Paper Girls is a comic series. I believe a successful one. Again, sort of full disclosure, I've never read the source material, so I'm coming out very cold. And I know sometimes, if you know the source material, you've read a book or a comic series and things get adapted, you can absolutely loathe it because it's sometimes, other than the names, it doesn't reflect anything that's in the comics. So I can only talk really on just watching it cold and what I'm seeing. So apologies to Paper Girls fans if it, doesn't meet your expectations. So, but just at face value. So again, the premise, it's obviously aimed at sort of young adult teenage market. I'm not really the demographic for it. Again, it's sort of sci-fi, time travel. So when I watched the first episode for Amazon, the premise was there, you could see it, but I think it was about 45 minutes and it dragged, and there was lots of fee-fees and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, action, talking, screaming, swearing, action, talking, action. So I was like, oh, blimey, this is like hard work to get through. You got 4 teenage girls that all they're doing is sort of shouting, screaming, crying, and talking, in case you didn't get that the last time. So I was quite interested to see what they've done with it when it's come out. They've definitely re-edited it, made it a bit shorter and punchier. Some of what was in the first episode is now in the start of the second episode. They sort of changed the order of some of it as well, which definitely made it flow better, much better. So the premise is you basically got 4 paper girls, girls who deliver newspapers. It's set in 1988 in a little town in Cleveland. And it's what they call Hell Night. So I think it's like Halloween night. Actually, it's the 1st of November. Yeah. So overnight Halloween, 1st of November, where basically you just get a load of teenage boys that seem to go around terrorizing the neighborhood and frightening the life out of these girls. So they basically decide, because of this Hell Night, they'll stick together, the 4 of them, get their routes done, and then get home safely. It's about like 5 a.m. in the morning. So, starts off doing the round. They run into some kids, I say kids, young teenagers. It's a bit of swearing, bit of trying to scare them, but they get away. Then one of the girls is sort of grabbed and dragged to the ground. She hurts herself, and then basically they had these walkie-talkies, and they've stolen one of these walkie-talkies. So the girls decide to go after them, thinking it's the group of lads they just ran into. When they catch up with them in this sort of housing construction building, they're not who they thought they were. And they're these 2 sort of late teens men who are badly scarred on the face. They're like quite, distorted faces, which obviously, quite as you expect, scares the bejesus out of them. And then this event happens. And when they leave, the sky is this bright pink. And basically, they obviously just run back to one of their houses, try and figure out what the hell has been going on. So one of their friends just nearly got kidnapped. She's hurt. They go back to one of the girls' houses. At the house, obviously, this is part of where they've actually improved the running of it. There was lots of arguing and talking, and you're a bit like, well, I don't really care because we don't really know what's going on. They were talking about lots of stuff that you're like, I don't understand what the jeopardy is. I don't understand because you're not showing us anything, kind of thing, So much better improved. But as a result, one of the girls decides to get a gun. There's some fighting, and they're saying, "Oh, we can't have a gun," blah blah blah. There's a bit of a to and fro, and then one of the girls gets shot, which then results in them getting in the car and trying to get to a hospital. En route to the hospital, that's they really realise that there's no one around. There's literally nobody around other than them, and then they basically the two mutants that they ran into stop the car. They end up basically being taken back to the ship. And like these little like creature bugs, like sort of bigger than nanites, but they kind of look like little bugs, are released to the girl Erin, who was shot, and basically heal her. Then in the midst of all of this, then another faction turns up, all in these kind of more military white uniforms. You start shooting at the two boys who have taken the girls. There's lots of toing and froing and stuff going on, and obviously lots of panicking, and the girls end up running away. And the upshot of all of this is basically they run away, but then they realize they're not in 1988 anymore. They're in 1999, I think. Can't remember. There's lots of time traveling going on. So that's kind of the premise to the show. And obviously then from that point on, it's like, well, how do they get home? So actually, no, I think they go to 2016 first. They go to 2016 first, and then they run into the girl that got shot, Erin. They go back to her house, but obviously it's still her house, but her grown-up self in 2016. So she then obviously agrees to help them, but she has no memory of all of this. So basically this kind of carries on, and then they have to try and figure out how to try and get back to 1988. And say, as I always say, given away, at one point they end up in 1999, and they go to a different character's older self, Tiff. She's the bright, intelligent one, wants to go to MIT, very self-assured. What I will say is that having 4 teenage leads, like they're supposed to be 12 years old, so actually they're all pretty well written and acted. I was expecting lots of snarky, obnoxious, sassy, the usual kind of crap we get right now. They are more nuanced than that. There is some sass. So, they're absolute years. I don't think you can get away with that. But then teenagers are a bit gobby. But I didn't actually despise them all or want them to die, which normally is how you kind of feel after the first couple of episodes of these sort of shows. So that's encouraging that they all act very well. I think a lot of their reactions are very very normal. The one thing I do find very strange at 12, and it's the same trope they had in Resident Evil, is that these girls are running around swearing like troopers, dropping F-bombs and shit and this, that, and the other thing everywhere. Now, maybe that's quite normal in America. I don't know. But I know in the UK at like 12 or 14, if I was swearing in front of my parents or even adults, I'd be grounded for the rest of my life and probably bounce from one end of the house to the other kind of thing. So I find it very strange that at the moment this is a very much trope of very, not that I'm prudish or anything. I mean, I swear a lot myself, but I am an adult. And I certainly wasn't using that kind of language in the way they were, probably till I was like 15, 16. So just like sort of 12-year-olds all going around F-bombing is very, very strange. There is one character that does it, and I think it does fit with her character. She's supposed to be a bit more wrong side of the tracks, alcoholic father, those kind of things. But a bit of a trope. You don't necessarily have to swear or be like that just because you're from that background. But it does kind of work with her very tough exterior. But the other girls are, sort of just as bad. So I did find that really strange, and I don't know what this sort of trope is right now. That I think that there seems to be a real thing about trying to make young teenage girls behave like 16, 17-year-old girls, and I'm a bit uncomfortable with that. But maybe the world's changing, maybe, but especially like 1988, and girls definitely didn't swear like that normally in 1988. But anyway, that's a bit of an aside, I guess. But given the target audience it's aimed at, I think they might need to curb it a little bit on the language. So overall, the 8 episodes, again, it was quite well paced. I did watch them all. I didn't hate the characters by the end of the 8, which was absolutely expecting to do so. And probably the one that's probably the most sort of sassy, ignoring, like the gobby one. actually, she has a really good story arc and quite a sad story arc. Don't want to spoil it, but yeah, she really sort of sees her life for what it is and what it could be. And you kind of really root for her by the end of it, actually. And if they do make a season 2, I do hope that she gets more of an opportunity to live her life. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, that is quite an interesting story arc and quite a heavy one, really, for a show aimed at quite young girls. But again, I think it's part of the problem with some of the shows these days. I'm not sure they're really clear who their target audience are. I think this one just about pulls off it's aimed at younger girls, but if you're older, like myself, you can watch it and not just be annoyed by it all. I don't think probably most middle-aged men are probably going to like it. I don't know. I might be doing them injustice because I think there is enough story there that they could actually get into it. But there is lots of teenage girls running around and screaming and being teenage girls. So maybe not. But overall, I think it's definitely worth watch. You kind of some of it's like I say, it is quite well written. It does hang together. There is some stuff where you go, well, why are they doing that? That's just stupid. You wouldn't do that. But they are teenage girls, so you can suspend disbelief a little bit for some of their actions. But yeah, I would be interested in seeing a season 2. When I first saw the preview of episode 1, I was like, "Oh, blimey, this is gonna be a hard slog series," and I wasn't even really that fussed about seeing it. So they've actually done a really good job of I guess listening to the feedback. I guess they must have got similar feedback that you got from myself, just saying this is really slow and wow, there's just way too much talking. This isn't the CW. You have to keep reminding people just because you're doing something for teenagers. It doesn't all have to be written like the CW. So so quite interesting. It's not the best bit of TV I've ever watched. It's certainly not the worst. It was definitely better than Resident Evil, but that's a very, very low bar. But yeah, I'd say you got a bit of spare time, odd afternoon, check it out, see what you think. It's better than I thought. The effects were quite good too, actually, better than I thought it was going to be. I'm interested in the season 2, but also I do appreciate I'm not the demographic they're aiming for, so there's some things, like I say, I think they could do better, but I think the target audience they're aiming at, I think will love it. So we'll see. The only other thing, I mean, that's pretty much it from TV show point of views this week. So very much looking forward to, it's one of those bittersweet things, looking forward to season finales, but also gutted that it's going to be the end of the series. But the good thing with streaming, you can go back and watch it all again. And as I say, we'll do some wrap-up shows around once the season finales have dropped. What do we think is going to be coming up in the next seasons? And those kind of things. There's just one other thing I did just want to say, that we had there's some really sad news this week that the living legend, or was living legend in this country, Bernard Cribbins, passed away, age 93. And growing up in the UK, he's like a big part of all our childhoods. There was a TV show called The Wombles when we were kids, and they were like these creatures that lived on Wimbledon Common, and this was like in the 70s, and they're way ahead of their time. They were all about tidying up and recycling and making the world a cleaner, nicer place. But it was really, really funny, and also it was a kids show, so it was all about treating people better, but it was about keeping Britain tidy. It's way ahead of its time. And he was the voice of that, and he'd done other kids shows. We had something called Jack and Ori, which was basically celebrities, about famous people. Over 5 days would read a book and tell you a story. So it could be a Roald Dahl book, it could be all sorts of things. And he'd done quite a few of those. He's just been in so many films and TV programs over the years. But a lot of people know him best recently for Doctor Who, being Donna's granddad. And he was just absolutely fantastic in that, even though he did technically kill the 10th Doctor, which I will never forgive him for. But he's still a lovely, lovely character. And as I said, he was 93. He was married for 66 years. He lost his wife last year. So probably not a massive surprise that he's no longer with us. But just wanted to say, very, very sad, and great guy. And if you get the opportunity to watch his Doctor Who episodes, do. He was also in one of the Peter Cushing Doctor Who films back in the 60s, the Dalek Invasion of Earth. He's great in that too. And if you can watch any sort of Jack and Ori or Wombles on the YouTubes, then do. And you'll probably get to see why we love him so much in this country. So rest in peace, Bernard, and thank you for everything that you've done in our childhoods right up to now in Doctor Who. So thank you for that. Anyway, I guess I ended on a sad note there. That wasn't really planned. I'm looking forward to my TV next week and what new shows are coming out. Obviously, as we're going through the summer, we'll start getting, new shows, or find out what's coming out in sort of October time, what's coming in the autumn or fall. So, and obviously what came out at Comic-Con, it wasn't a great deal actually for, I think, anybody's particularly excited about, which is a shame. I think lots of networks and streaming services don't really know where to go right now. They're making what they feel they should make, which isn't really landing with a lot of people. The few shows that are sort of, or films that buck the mold, like Terminal List and obviously Top Gun, that just there to entertain, are doing outstandingly well. The Marvel stuff, do we have superhero fatigue, or is it just really not very good anymore? Probably a bit of both. So there aren't really any Marvel shows or Star Wars shows that I'm really looking forward to. Unfortunately, I was really excited for Kenobi, and there's elements of it you can love, and it was great seeing Ewan and Hayden back, but that was a wasted opportunity. I think they could have done so much more with them. But I just think the whole thing should have been keeping them apart and seeing how their lives had kind of happened in parallel. And maybe had Darth off training to be a Sith, and seeing how he becomes a Sith Lord and hunting down the remaining Jedi. And you could see Kenobi, looking out for Luke, doing his training with Qui-Gon. I know maybe you could have had them meeting up in like the sort of Force visions kind of stuff like we got in the sequel trilogy. I don't know. But I just really think the whole them fighting and the repercussions of that just don't work. Ultimately, Darth Vader is supposed to be the second most evil person in the galaxy after the Emperor. And Obi-Wan had an opportunity to kill him, take him out the picture completely. He even said that my friend is truly dead. He didn't even see him as Anakin anymore and walked away. So if you do that, then basically the deaths and the millions and millions of people and the remaining Jedi that happen after he just walked away, it's kind of on Obi-Wan, really. And I just don't think that fits with Obi-Wan's character, his ethics, all those kind of things. And it certainly doesn't fit with canon. So I think they could have made this show, had both characters in it with parallel storylines, but not having them meet would have been much more effective. And you still could have had like Reva in it, and maybe she was an apprentice to Vader and actually built out her character. I think she was given very poor writing. She just was kind of going around sort of, roar, I'll get you, roar, shouting at the clouds. Very, very strange. When she actually had an amazing backstory, that, the development and the characterization, you could have seen her going through that completely torn. She was a youngling. She was going to be a Jedi. She ends up with the Sith. I mean, what does that do to your psyche? There was so much they could have done with that character. And I feel kind of sorry for Moses that they didn't give her better writing. They didn't give her a better opportunity to act that character. And then also, basically kind of just constantly have her running around, say, shouting and being angry at the clouds and being stabbed with lightsabers and surviving. They were just setting her up to fall with the fans, and not because of her authenticity. It's purely because her character was so poorly written. And fans, you can see like this character could have been amazing. This character could have been a real standout character if you actually bothered to write a decent backstory for her that made sense and spent more time on her backstory and what she was going through and why she was going through it, rather than just having this crazy woman running around being angry at everybody. And we're all like, okay, what? That's an angry lady. Why is she angry? Time of the month. What the hell? So yeah. Anyway, I don't know quite how I strayed into Kenobi, but but enough said. Anyway, yeah. So not much coming out of Comic-Con. I don't think there's any shows that really came out of that I'm excited to see. Let's hope that some new shows do come up, or they do listen to feedback. It doesn't have to be fans per se, but same as Amazon, it's this game that Amazon's got that you can watch stuff. I've signed NDAs, so you can't talk about it, and I haven't spoken about it till the series come out. But it's a good way of getting feedback and just giving you time to tweak stuff. And you don't have to spend loads on reshoots, but it's just actually just listening to. And I don't think fans, but like TV fans, sci-fi fans, we're not all nut jobs. So anyway, that's it. I've been going on for way too long for my weekly roundup, I'm sure. So anyway, cheers. Here's to a good week of TV and nerdiness, and I'll be with you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.